Hi, everybody, welcome into Sports Talk Chicago. My name's Jon Zaghloul. Great to have you here on Channel 59.3 BPON TV and Roku. Big news today, Nagy Eberflus and Ryan Poles have spoken to the media for the first time in a while. We'll break it all down in just a second. Before we get started, make sure you follow me on Twitter and Instagram at Jon Z Sports and on Facebook at Jon Zaghloul. If you want to watch more of this show, search up Sports Talk Chicago on YouTube or go to sportstalkchicago.com. If you want to watch more shows from the BPON TV network, search up BPOD TV on YouTube. I want to start today with this. We as humans have all one collective fear. Everybody could say, I fear this, to an extent, the unknown. We don't know what's coming, don't know what's in store, so naturally we're going to be scared for a bit. I was. When the Bears hired Ryan Poles, Nagy Eberflus. You'll remember my video. I didn't delete it. Still up. Certainly wasn't happy. I was fearful, cautiously optimistic, a bit worried. No experience between the two. Certainly a reason why I should be concerned. But as I've gotten to know them more and more, through press conferences, through articles, interviews, I've grown fonder and fonder of what they're trying to do with the Bears. Now again, I want to preface this whole video by saying they've done nothing yet. All of this has been talk. Maybe that's my pessimistic side talking, but it's true. They haven't done anything yet. Nothing's definite. Nothing's been put into action. Free agency hasn't even started. Or the draft either. There's still no way to gauge how they've done as a tandem so far. We'll know a couple of months. We'll know after next season for sure. We don't know now. We can only decipher, piece together what they're saying, and try and understand what their philosophy is moving forward. That's fine. But I have to say right now, at least, Ryan Poles has done a pretty good job at evaluating what this Bears team needs and what its problems were last year. Had a couple of quotes to read to you from Ryan Poles from the Combine in Indianapolis. He said that it bothered him when watching film that players were not protecting their quarterback, Justin Fields, from late hits. Quote, "You gotta take pride in protecting the QB. We will fix that." I like that. Ryan Poles also looked at historical cases of how to help a QB after his rookie year. The takeaway, quote, "Find him a receiver who can bail him out when he needs it." Bears had that, by the way, in Allen Robinson for Mitchell Trubisky. Admittedly, Fields didn't really have that this past year. Robinson barely played. Darnell Mooney to an extent, yes, and Poles also praised Mooney himself and said he was really high on him. Great to hear. But Justin Fields doesn't have that number one big-time wide receiver, big name, who can bail him out when he needs it. I understand these are a couple of quotes. Doesn't mean all of a sudden Ryan Poles is great and the Bears are doing great things, but it does mean they understand what the problem is. Those two quotes make a ton of sense. Justin Fields did get hit a lot, late especially, sacked way too many times for my liking. Number two, did not have the one guy to bail him out. Obviously, in Matt Nagy's offense, who is going to bail you out, right? But seriously, who do you have? Darnell Mooney had a growing season last year. He's still on the up and up. It's not like he's an established household name. Allen Robinson was sabotaged. So there really was nobody else on the roster capable of helping out Justin Fields when he needed somebody. Think about 2018. Allen Robinson was that guy for Mitch Trubisky. Whenever Mitch was in trouble, running, bad pocket, on the move, bootleg, it always went to Robinson. And he made every catch imaginable. He looked great that year. That's what Justin Fields needs. Poles also said on NFL Network that he really believes Justin Fields is the guy at the quarterback position for the Bears. He saw a lot of flashes when watching film on Fields. He can't wait for Fields to start working with Luke Getsy, the offensive coordinator. Nagy Eberflus wants his defense to be fanatical about creating takeaways. I mean, look, they're saying all the right things here. To their credit, there's no criticism whatsoever. They're saying what needs to be said about this team. They're evaluating the real problems that the Bears have and that they've had. Think about 2018. What made 2018 so special? All these things that Ryan Poles and Matt Eberflus are talking about apply to 2018. The Bears haven't had that since. The Bears have not had any of that since. All these things, this blueprint, this formula that they're talking about for success was there in 2018, and it magically went away. Well, we know partially why, but still. Fanatical about takeaways, a bailout wide receiver for a young quarterback, late hits protecting your quarterback, all those ingredients were here in 2018. Result, 12-4 season, and in my opinion, could have been a Super Bowl contender. Could have been in the Super Bowl. They had a competent kicker. And now we hear the same things again. These are the things the Bears need to be successful, according to Eberflus and Poles. I like it. And I'm appreciative of the fact that they're not reinventing the wheel, per se. What do I mean by that? Well, they're coming out and saying, we need to fix this, and this. We need a big overhaul. We need to rethink football. That's not what they're saying here. They know how this Bears team could win. Saw it in 2018. Young quarterback, good defense, a lot of takeaways, good wide receiving help when needed, and they won. They did great. Why give it away from that, right? I'm appreciative of their honesty here. And here's what I like even more, by the way. This signals small ego or no ego for them. Not like they're sitting here criticizing Matt Nagy and Ryan Pace. I might be, but they aren't. They're pretty much admitting, with all these quotes, that 2018 worked for a reason. It worked. That was Ryan Pace and Matt Nagy. So why try and reinvent something? Why try and make your team so much different? Just a few years ago, there was a serious winning formula on display. That team had 34 takeaways, clutch wide receiver, young quarterback, good protection, good enough protection. And they won. They did great. Why abandon that formula just because a new regime took over? I love that. That's no ego. That's a sign of no ego on the part of Eberflus and Poles. I love it. There were a lot of positives out of this press conference. Again, though, I want to stress this a lot. No moves have been made yet. It's encouraging to see that they know what's going on, what the problem is, but we haven't seen any moves yet. This free agency period, the draft, and moving forward in the next year, Justin Fields' progression too, all this will determine whether or not they're successful, whether or not we could call them successful. I appreciate their honesty and their forthrightness about the state of this team. Maybe at times I'm a bit too much doom and gloom about the Bears. I want the best out of this team, no question, and I don't see a roster at least that signals the best, but by following these plans, by talking about essentially what 2018 was, it's possible we could see a big improvement for this year. And I'm not talking about Super Bowl, but I'm talking about potential playoff appearance, potential playoff win, not impossible by any stretch. I'm not going to sit here and feed you false hope. All of this is contingent on what happens in free agency and in the draft. And that's going to be the way to gauge whether or not Ryan Poles and Matt Eberflus are following through on their philosophy. They could say all the right things right now. What matters is, are they going to execute? See, the last regime executed for 1 year. Then it was a total train wreck. What will happen with them? How will they execute and bring in what the Bears need? Hey, step one to solving a problem is admitting you have one. Step one to solving a problem is admitting, hey, I got a problem. And right now, Eberflus and Poles are admitting the Bears have a problem. They're also doing this. They're recognizing and pretty much publicizing that the 2018 model worked. 2018 worked for this team. All these quotes, to me, sound like they want to be the 2018 Bears again. And I have no complaints about that because that team was great. I don't have one complaint about that. There's no ego so far. Eberflus and Poles. They're telling everybody, here are the problems, here's how we can fix them. And based on these quotes, they want 2018 Bears football to return. Fanatical about takeaways. Bailout receiver for Justin Fields. Protecting him from late hits. All these philosophies, all these ideas to improve the Bears, newsflash, that was 2018. They want 2018 Bears football. Fine by me. I'm not going to complain about that. That's great news. We should all be celebrating that there's no ego here, that they're acknowledging at one point this team was great, and that it's pretty simple to get back to that level. It is. It's not overly difficult. They didn't come in here and say, let's abandon everybody and let's rebuild this team from the bottom up. They know what it takes to win. They're acknowledging that at one point, a few years back, not too long ago, this team had a formula, a great formula to win. Fanatical takeaways, bailout wide receiver for a young QB, and the young QB avoiding getting sacked too many times. That's how they won in 2018. I don't care if it's Nagy, Mitch Trubisky, whatever, but the point is that's how they won. 34 takeaways, decent enough protection for Trubisky, and a bailout wide receiver, Allen Robinson. They won. So why reinvent some sort of winning formula? And to their credit, Eberflus and Poles, they're not doing it. There's no ego here. I love that. That's the sign of a good head coach and GM off the bat. Have to see what they do, have to see the actions, the executions that they perform, but I like the quotes. I like the philosophy. Why reinvent something that didn't need much fixing to begin with? This Bears team was driven into the gutter by the coaching philosophy, more than anything. Had nothing to do with quarterback or personnel. Part of that was, but the majority was coaching philosophy. Matt Nagy and the offense was the biggest problem. Defense always stayed pretty on point. 2018 was great, and the rest of the year's not so much, not up to that par, but they were still pretty good. Top 10, top 15. It was the offense that hurt this Bears team for years. And they know that. We all know that. So the philosophy now is, let's get back to 2018. Remember 2018, everything was easier, or at least not as much pressure for Mitch Trubisky. 34 takeaways meant shorter fields. Mitch was more comfortable, made good plays, good passes, had a good wide receiver. And the Bears won a ton of games. You could do the same this year. Tons of takeaways, shorter fields for Justin Fields, and on top of it, a bailout wide receiver. And you could win a lot of football games. I'm telling you right now. You could win a lot of football games if you follow that philosophy to a T. But what do the Bears need? Well, they need a bailout wide receiver. They need better O-line help, and they need to make sure to develop Justin Fields. We all know this. That said, I'm very appreciative of the honesty. And again, I'm appreciative of the fact they acknowledged indirectly the old formula worked. They didn't say, oh, Matt Nagy sucked. No. Every quote that they've said, that they've talked about when it comes to success, was 2018 Bears football. Everything. This is not a foreign concept. Fanatical on takeaways, bailout wide receiver, offensive line protection, protecting your quarterback. To me, sounds like 2018 Bears football, and that's fine. They won 12 games. They were great. I have no complaints there. And I love the fact that they agree. They came in. They aren't here to reinvent anything. They're here to win. Not reinvent, not, oh, I'm going to put in my own system. That's a Matt Nagy thing. Not Matt Eberflus, not Ryan Poles. They acknowledged there was some sort of success back in 2018 with the last regime. And it's smart of them to say, you know what? Let's not reinvent. Let's not go crazy here. This team won in 2018. Why can we get back to that point and move up from there? That's smart. That's very smart. No ego, no complaints, no problems. Just how can we win today and then move up? Well, you know what? 2018 is a good starting point. You get this team back to 2018 level this upcoming year, in 2 years, there's more room to move up. So I'm pretty encouraged by what they said at the Combine. And as we move forward with free agency and the draft, we're going to have to see what they end up trying to do.